Okay, so to begin the look, I'm going to start off with the eyes. First, priming them before moving on to eyeshadow. All the eyeshadows that I'm going to be using in today's look come from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. I absolutely love that palette. It's full of awesome warm tone colors, which are just super appropriate for fall and therefore super appropriate for Halloween as well. So just working on the eyes first before moving on to liner. So just simply giving myself a nice thinned out elongated wing, nothing too dramatic because I didn't want to overpower the rest of the look. And then moving on to brows. In order to get nice defined brows, I'm using my pomade from Anastasia. I'll have everything that I use down in the description bar below in case you all are interested. Next, moving on to some nice bold lashes. These ones here are from the House of Lashes. They're my current favorite ones. They're in the style boudoir. So just applying those before moving on to color correcting my dark circles. Since that part of the look is going to be a beauty look, I definitely wanted to hide my dark circles. So applying a nice thinned out layer of the color corrector before moving on to foundation. And for this particular look, I wanted a full coverage foundation, so I went with the Urban Decay All Nighter and just applied that onto the outer perimeter of my face. So just kind of like the sides of my face and then like the outer halves of my cheeks, since that is where I'm not going to be placing the skull. So anywhere that I kind of already knew that I wasn't going to be placing the skull, that is where I'm going to be applying foundation and then just simply blending it all out using my damp beauty blender. Next, moving on to concealer, just applying some of that onto the under eye area, blending it out using my damp beauty blender and setting it into place using my translucent loose powder. Next, moving on to contouring my face just a little bit and then applying some nice, just really subtle blush onto my cheeks. And of course, what's a beauty look without some highlights? So applying some of that onto the tops of my cheekbones and a little bit along the temple area. And that completes the beauty portion of this look. Now we move on to the skull portion. So to begin the skull portion, I'm just taking a white pencil, a white eyeliner pencil, and just mapping out exactly where I'm going to want to place the skull, like where I'm going to want the skull to begin on my face. Next, moving on to applying a nice base along this entire portion of my face. This one here is from Mayron. I believe it is in the shade Moonlight White. Moonlight White, I believe, is the shade. Like I said, I'll have everything listed down below. It's a cream paint, so I'm just setting that down with my finger and then just kind of blending it out using my damp beauty blender. Which damp, I don't know if that was probably the best way to go. I mean, I didn't try it dry, but I did find it to be a little bit patchy, so you just have to be careful with it. And I guess work fast because it does dry up, and then that's when it gets a little bit patchy. So just applying that onto the entire section of the face that I've gone ahead and mapped out. Next, I'm going to be moving on and outlining this entire section. This I am going to be outlining with some Mayron once again paint. This is from the Paradise palette and it is some water activated paint. So just taking that along with the brush that came with the palette and outlining both sides of my face where the white ends and then the makeup, like the beauty makeup, begins. Next, I'm going to be applying the hollow of the nose onto the skull portion. And for this, just picture an upside down heart with a split tip. So just imagine that you went ahead and you just cut the bottom of the heart right in half and it kind of split open, and then you place that upside down onto your nose, and that is pretty much going to give you a nice looking hollow of a skull nose. Does that make sense? So just applying that onto the nose before completely filling it all in. Next, I'm going to start working on the teeth, and I'm going to do this using a liner brush for more exact kind of placement of the lines. These do not have to be perfect by any means, and what I was doing is I was just kind of smiling and then just imitating where my teeth went and then just elongating that top. So elongating the top portion, elongating the bottom portion, and then just imitating where my teeth lie so that it's a more accurate, I guess, portion and more accurate placement, if you will. So just doing that and drawing the teeth in more in a triangle shape than in a square shape, because that's naturally how our teeth are. They're a lot thinner at the root than they are down on the bottom. And so then just trying to mimic that and keep that as straight as possible all the way across. Now, I didn't fill in as many teeth as I actually have, but I think I was only short by like 2 teeth up top. I think. So not really worrying about kind of exactly how I'm placing them, not really being too neat about it because there's going to be a ton of shading, and so I'm not really too worried about it at this point. And then, of course, moving on to the bottom teeth and just doing the exact same thing that I did along the top. The only additional thing that I did during this step was that I filled in between the teeth. I filled in with a little bit of black paint, since this is definitely going to help me once I start to blend and to shade in between. Next, I'm just taking this little tiny accent brush, this one here is from Real Techniques, and kind of just mapping out with a little tiny bit of black on it, exactly where the hollows of my cheeks are going to be along the side. Using that exact same little blending brush, or little accent brush rather, I'm going to be smudging and kind of shading in between the teeth in order to get rid of those harsh lines that I've created because they're not perfect anyway and I don't want them to be. I'm going to be blending in between, and I'm not really adding any additional product. I'm working with what I already have on my face. Since I do have a cream base and then the water paint is actually really easy to blend out and smudge around, I'm working with that. But on places where I do feel like it gets a little bit too light, or I need a little bit more of, the black color to come back, I used really, really dark shadow. The one that I used is Corrupt from Makeup Geek, which is like the deepest, darkest black that I own. And so yeah, that's what I was doing, just shading in between with the product that I already had in between the teeth, and then whenever I needed it, I would use the Corrupt shadow. And make sure you also get in between the teeth, kind of darken that area up a little bit, and also in between the lips, since that's where I decided to split the teeth. After that, I worked on darkening the hollows of my cheeks and then just shading that area as well with a combination of the black paint and the black eyeshadow. And then I just continued to shade all the way up the entire black line of the skull look. And this I'm doing with a smudge brush, I believe it's called. It's from Sephora. I got it a really long time ago, but pretty much what it is it's just a really, really short, dense brush that is really good for kind of spreading around products that you already have, which is exactly what I'm doing here. I'm using the black paint that I already have and just spreading that out in order to shade everything. So moving on to the chest and the neck area, for this portion I'm going to go back to the cream paint that I initiated this look with and just grabbing that on a foundation brush and just applying a line down my neck, down the center of my neck, which is going to be our vertebrae essentially, or vertebrae line, and then just looking at my collarbone and following the bones that are along there all the way to the shoulder. So just simply placing a line on the right, placing a line on the left along the collarbone. And then further defining the vertebrae by placing actual individual ones, or somewhat individual ones. So I'm just placing a line on each side of the line drawn straight down my neck. And then going in with some black paint. This one is the exact same one that I used on my face. It's the water activated paint from the palette, and just simply going around all the white lines that I've created along my chest area and my neck area. So filling everything in using the same foundation brush that I used in order to place the white paint. And how much or how little you actually want to fill in, that is completely up to you. It just depends on what kind of shirt you're going to be wearing or what kind of outfit is going to be, worn that night. How much you want to show as far as, the skull portion of this look. So totally up to you. And then the last thing that I wanted to do was make it look like my face had broken down the middle, and that is why you're seeing the skull. So I went ahead and I added those lines in order to resemble that onto the outer portion of the skull using a tiny little liner brush and some black face paint. And I'm just being really light with it, and I'm kind of just not going in any, specific direction, just kind of randomly drawing really light lines. Just going outward, kind of like resembling tree branches. And that completes the look. Thank you all so much for watching my first Halloween tutorial this year. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you are going to give it a try, make sure that you tag me on Instagram because I would love to see some recreations. As always, take care, and I will see you all in my next video.